Welcome to Reality After Show coverage of the Challenge Season 40. We finally made it. It's felt like it's taken 9 months to get through the season, but today we are finally discussing the finale, part 2 of Season 40. I'm your host, Dan Montchal, joined as always, Alex Trias, Paulie Calafiore. Alex, Paulie, we did it, guys. We finally made it through this long season.
Holy hell.
Look, if you include the weeks off, episode 0, we've essentially gone half a year talking about this season. We did it, guys. And everyone who's listening to us along the way, thank you. Because it was just as much a swimming marathon for us as it was for the finalists.
It was a swimming marathon. We ran our own final for the last 2 months. Okay.
Yeah.
December and January have been hard, guys. Through the holidays, through everything, we kept at it.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you guys, there is a secret twist. There was, and now that we finished it, there is karma points that have to be added to our final scores. It did change the finalists. Sorry, Dan, you're not getting paid any money.
Sounds about right. Not surprised. Not surprised.
It's a shame, man.
I think my favorite.
We're all not getting paid.
I think my favorite part of it was last week. Paulie was like, I gave all of Era 4 like 5s, and then halfway through the week, you're like, oh shit, I gave them all.
Look. Do not put anything.
You got wrecked by Theo, so I wouldn't remember anything either.
Look, I would also think I was putting 5s. I was putting down 1s on everyone if my lights were not on.
Oh yeah. You know, honestly, after 2 concussions, I thought a 1 was a 5 and a 5 was 1. I feel like I needed it explained to me, like the way surveys of airlines who vacuums at this time. And the way yet all morning. Like at the end of airline surveys where it's like press 1 for and press 5 for this, with 5 being very good and 1 being very bad. Like I needed that explanation there.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. I think I got the explanation. I think I honestly now I feel like I gave everybody in the house 1s except for Jordan, who I gave a 4. Cara, I gave a 5. Bananas, I surprisingly gave. I think I gave him a 3, and it was because it started out of 5 because I was like, we're boys, but then after he threw Cara in, I was like, that's at least -2. I'm like, but you did promise me that you might protect her, and then the podcast came out. So I was like, all right, I feel like they're all right, but they in fact were not all right. So
no, but let's not bury the lead here. Jordan gets his 5th overall challenge win. And so continues the confusion of what they count and don't count, Dan. They are counting World Championships as a finals win for him on the show.
There's a lot of confusion with it, and I don't think it's really that hard. World champs and all-stars count, like wins count. Like Wes's win, his 3rd one in all-stars counts. John A's 2 on all-stars counts. But like, if you're going to try to do like the champs versus pros, no, they don't count. They spent half the time at a hotel and had their nights off. Like that doesn't count. World champs, all-stars, good. Everything else, no.
Yeah, but they pretend that All-Stars never happens because Derek hasn't been here in 15 years or whatever until this moment, you know. But regardless, Jordan now won his 5th final. I think it's about like eight finals overall.
7
or something. Seven.
He lost his first one with Marlon, which was
he lost
essentially due to swimming, and then he lost with Anissa because they decided to partner him with Anissa.
Well, they're ride or dies. Didn't you know that? Like,
of course,
best friends for decades.
They never hated each other. That's not what happened.
No, they never did, and you know, it tracks. But Jordan did what you need to do if you are in a final, which is regardless of the twist of the game, because obviously we all have our complaints about the karma points and how it impacted the game.
Oh, they come in commenters.
And no internet people, you can't say, well, TJ clued them in on what the twist was all season long. No, you can't say TJ saying at some point in time, remember how you treat people. like means that that's going to come back in the final and means that I will be negatively impacted in the final score of a final. Like,
yeah,
but
Paulie, did all they explained to you when you were doing the karma points was just that it was going to play an impact on the final, right? Like you didn't know anything more than that.
They said that it was going to impact people's game in the final. So you had no idea who was going to make it to the final. So I was obviously petty with mine, but also I was like, I'm out first. Like I was like, I shouldn't really have an impact on anybody's like final performance. You know what I mean? So like all of my votes were like pretty much neutral, except for people like where I thought about it, where I was like, if they make the final, it would be very impressive, right? Cara being obviously, not take away the aspect that, she's my girlfriend, right? The aspect that she went into the first elimination, I thought it was just going to be one of those seasons for her. So if she made it to the final, I was going to be like, that's an extremely impressive thing. And she almost did. It was a very extremely impressive social game from her. Jordan, because of the way he came in and everybody was sitting there, trying to plant the seeds of like, he's here, he's got to go in, and nobody took the shot. I'm like, if he made it, impressive. Bananas, I also thought that it would be impressive if he made it because, I mean, looking at that entire cast at that point in the game, and there was a lot of people there who were like anti him, the fact that he kind of shielded himself and navigated the game the way he did. I mean, it's impressive. I mean, and then when you watch the season play out, it's like he did win eliminations. Yes, he was cringy as fuck all season. Probably the most cringy I've ever seen him. Bananas, you used to make fun of me for less, buddy. But you can't take away the fact that he won eliminations to keep himself safe. He created a line in the sand, and he somehow got himself to the final. And I mean, it was a rough final showing for him, but he still finished third. And regardless of what anybody says about Kylan's swimming abilities, which are god awful, take away that Kylan is a good competitor.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that actually brings up another point, because like they were really trying to emphasize how much better the women were in this final than the men. And I feel like we touched on it last week, and I'm not discrediting the women at all because I think the women overall did kill it. But
outstanding performance.
I think there's something to be said of when you're amongst the women and you're a little more scattered in the points that with karma involved, it can be anyone's game, as we found out with the outcome, versus the men where outside of the overnight where Jordan, did so horrible, he got second. He got first in everything else, where it was like, even if he got last in the karma points, it wasn't changing the outcome. Like, he built a big enough lead where it did not matter anymore what karma was involved, which is what you should do in a final. It's like, as soon as there's an outcome in there, which is why I was against Bananas' thing of, well, I should hold something in the tank on checkpoint 1, because I'm like, this is now a factor. You have to win. Like, you can't just be resting on your laurels hoping that you get a lucky puzzle here or there or something that bends your way. Because as you saw with Bananas, he tried conserving, and then later on, it backfired on him because he ends up failing in multiple checkpoints, which allows Derek to overseed him, which would have ultimately happened regardless with karma involved. But it's like, it's a kudos to Jordan for breaking the mechanics of the game by essentially just being so good that it didn't matter.
Yeah, but parroting on your first point there is, I think, yes, the women were far ahead of the men minus Jordan on a lot of these checkpoints. But yes, it was because at that point, I think not that Derek and Bananas were broken. They knew first shot they had no shot in hell in. So as long as they were staying with relatively close, whether it was ahead or behind of the other, there was no need for them to kill themselves. Maybe it was, I'm going to leave a little in the tank for something where maybe I can pass them down a stretch, because they knew first wasn't an option. Where you had the women, they pretty much had to kill themselves because it became obvious as the further you went on that Jenny and Michelle were ahead of the other two, but it was still relatively close enough that it was, even Tori was like, if she went on a run and won like 2 of the last checkpoints or something, it would have put her back in the mix, where you just didn't have that on the guy's side.
Yeah, and I mean, and that just is a testament to Jordan's mindset, and he highlighted it all final.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All final.
All final.
Like, he was the only one thinking about the karma points in that capacity of like, I'm so good. This is the only thing that can affect me. I have to remove all doubt. Like, there's like a saying in sports, like, maybe not once you get to the pros, because it's a little bit more public and regulated, but you all know, like, when you're going to that one town to play against the team that you have a rivalry against, when you're playing in that town, the refs are going to be on their side. They're going to give them everything, right? If you're playing football, they're getting every holding penalty, every pass interference that puts them in the red zone, anything that'll do it. Like when we were playing soccer, it's like you knew the ref was going to call at least 2 penalty kicks. So like our coaches would always be like, we're already losing 2-0 going into the game. So we got to score 2 goals in the first half, and we got to score 2 goals in the second half and put the game away. And like clockwork, it would always happen, right? You would score, penalty kick would happen. You would score, penalty kick would happen, right? So it's like if the halftime it was 2-2, your coach would be like, we're down 4-2. We need 2 goals this next half, right? And that's just the mindset that Jordan had the entire final, where he was like, I'm already losing. I have to win by so much that I'm removing all doubt. And he did just that. I mean, every single checkpoint, and it wasn't close.
Yeah, it was the remember the Titans thing, where the same thing with the penalties, that run it up, Herm, leave no doubt.
Exactly.
And that's what Jordan did. He left.
That's what Jordan did. I love that.
By
reference.
the way, any sports fan or like coach or whatever that gets butthurt over running up the score, you play the game. You play until there's zeros on the clock. And that's what Jordan does. Like, yeah, that's the exact mindset that my coaches would instill into me. Is you go into halftime regardless of score. Like, it's either you're playing as if it's a tie game right now and every point counts, or you're playing as if it's behind and you keep putting that chip on your shoulder. And Jordan's that type of guy who constantly loves having that chip on his shoulder, because that's the drive that gets him. That's the drive that pushes him further and further and further and further. I was surprised, though, just because like the overall impression of the season, I was a little surprised to see Kylan ending up with more karma points than Jordan.
I was a little surprised by that too, but I think there may have been a lot of sentiment, is because we didn't see a ton of it in the edit, but we did hear about it. Like Leroy essentially gave, like, even his boy Bananas gave him a 1, because
that's crazy.
Because he wanted a new champion to be there. So, and you heard that echoed from a few different people. So it wouldn't surprise me that Jordan got a lot of stray 1s, not because he didn't have a good social game, but because there were so many people in that house, especially the non-champions, that were like, we want a new champion to have their time in the shine.
And you know what? None of them got what they wanted, because all the champions were already existing champions. And in fact, if they were a little kinder, if they truly meant that, they would have rated Michelle higher, because if Michelle so much as, like, even if all karma points stayed the same, if one of the 2 checkpoints where she came in 4th place, she got 2nd place as she was like lining up to get, or even a 1st place, all else being equal, she's the sole winner right now. Like, even with the karma points, if she just got a 2nd place on that puzzle on the part 1, she will have been 1 point higher than Jenny and will have been the sole possession of 1st place, even with the karma points involved.
I feel like overall, I'm taking Jordan out of this. Overall, Michelle had the best finals performance.
Agreed.
And How
I
much
was
of that?
extremely impressed by Michelle's performance.
Yeah,
As
and like
somebody who thought Michelle would be a layup in the final,
mhm.
blown away. Got to give credit where credit's due. She's always been good at the eliminations. You know, we haven't seen her in a physical one yet, obviously, but she's always kind of struggled with the dailies, which is usually an indication on a season like this, where like a lot of the dailies were kind of very finals-esque on how she was going to do. So the way she performed just absolutely blew me away.
And the one thing I don't want to hear, and it's for her and for Jordan, being like, well, they only did so well just because it was all swimming and not the normal final. That's not either of their faults. They signed up to play the game, and this is the final that, Buna Murray decided to throw out there. Give them credit, because most people swimming that much, sure, it gives Jordan more of an advantage. It gives Michelle a bump up that maybe she wouldn't have if it was all running instead of swimming. But that is harder to do that much swimming than it is to do miles of running. It's neither of their faults. They showed up and played the game that was in front of them.
And like you hear Michelle and Jordan talk about this, whether it's on the show or in the like post-game interviews they've done so far, it's a mindset. It's like finding those grooves. And like Michelle feels more comfortable in the water, which is an advantage. But she also is like, at a certain point, you're exhausted, you have no energy left, but it's like you have the zone in you where I understand the rhythm, I understand what I need to do, and that allows you to push through. Whereas you have someone like Kyland who's going into this knowing he's in last and just being like, well, I'm going to swim, but like I know I'm not going to do well. So like if you go into it with a defeated attitude, you can't be surprised then when you come back and you are the last person to finish constantly. Whereas like, Michelle knew how much was riding on her doing well in the water to keep up with Jenny, to be in front of Rachel. And like she did outside of the two checkpoints.
That's what's impressive, because she wasn't always in second place on those swims. She would usually be catching them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, like you saw
Jenny kind of beasted it a lot, but like she would be pretty far behind Rachel.
Yeah, like I would say Jenny did the right thing in the second day where she was like, well, like, obviously I'm not going to swim at Jordan's pace, but she was like, as long as I can see Jordan in eyesight, that means no one else is close to me.
Yeah.
So, like, Jenny did a great job, and kudos to her for just killing it across the water. And more importantly, killing it on, like, a lot of the checkpoints, because, like, Jenny's strong point isn't the puzzles. It isn't the math. And yes, it's simple math, but let's be real, it's a challenge. There's nothing simple about math for a lot of these people. But she was able to keep up and like just really get stuff done and get back into the water. Michelle, you could say in the math challenge, was the last girl to leave and she got second. Mm-hmm. So it's like she was better in the water. She was better in the final that was provided to her than at least Rachel and Tori.
Correct.
So it's sort of like a bitter pill to swallow, which again, we can't say like don't complain for Michelle and Jordan getting a swimming final and then complain about the karma points. But it's a shame that the karma points take away that feeling, because it to me, it's different than stealing the money. It's different than Ashley going and taking the money from Hunter. It's different than Bananas stealing the money from Sarah, because for essentially both of those finals, they knew ahead of time that was a rule within the game. That was something that can happen at the end. Whereas this was like karma's coming around in some shape or form. There's still, and while people are praising production for being transparent, I'm like, they weren't transparent enough. And that's my issue. It's just like they were vaguely transparent to the point where we can believe that it was always intended to be 2 checkpoints because they say it at the beginning of the episode. It's so easy for them to change it because the challenge is not a game show.
Well, and it's so easy to see where they change it because it's where you have TJ saying something where you can't see his mouth moving. Most of the times when that happens, when something's being explained or he's talking, they brought him in back after the fact to record that, to throw it in the episode. Mm-hmm. You're paying attention. It's pretty easy to tell what was thrown in afterwards and what he said actually when everyone else was there.
And
That's
Paulie,
so
like, I don't want to
What?
put you on
that
the
you
spot.
can tell that.
It's obvious.
That's like our, like, you know, secret. Like when we're standing there and like he's just saying different lines over and over again, and then like after we leave, like he's still standing there like saying lines over and over again to like nothing in front of him. But the fact that you can pick that up, it's like, oh man, that's not good.
Well,
easy
it
to
became
tell
like
what's there
obvious.
and
Like
what's
some,
not,
I
yeah.
forget what season it was, but there was a season where it was like it finally was revealed to the audience that I was just like, oh yeah, he's just sound biting right now. Like this isn't in front of anyone. This is afterwards, just over tape. I think it was actually during War of the Worlds because like I'm pretty sure like the second War of the Worlds wasn't originally supposed to be War of the Worlds 2. It was supposed to be some other name, and then they had to keep going over it in the beginning of the season.
I forget what I forget what War of the Worlds 2 was supposed to be called, but
I feel like it was something like Revolution themed, like essentially a play off of the Revolutionary War, because it was supposed to be like the Brits versus US essentially.
Yeah.
But I want to bring up also, because it's just the outcome of the season with karma points. I listened to some sound bites of Jordan's interview with Zach on Zach's pod, and Jordan specifically calls out how post Rivals 2, the classification of the challenge changed on what the contracts said on that you guys signed. Where essentially prior to Rivals 2, it was always challenge as a game show. It had outside people like judging. They had actual judges for stuff in the competitions. That it had to be by the book because it was listed as a game show. And then post Rivals 2, it got classified not as a game show, but as reality television. So like with reality television, you no longer have like a game board, essentially. You don't have this guiding path. You have things will be left up to production discretion. And that's where like some of the decisions could be different. Like there was someone in the chat earlier who was talking about what if the karma points was actually only supposed to be one checkpoint. They saw that it didn't impact anything on either side. So then they were like, well, let's make it 2 checkpoints.
There you go. Conspiracy theory. Was it rigged so that the OGs could say they finally got a championship? Paulie, go. No, just kidding.
No, I was going to bring this up because
I don't think Rachel should have won.
No.
I never knew how the karma points were going to factor in. The fact that they were worth 2 checkpoints was insane to me. Like,
right.
Because
worth 2 checkpoints because
like what it ended up being.
Bring
right
out our
there
tinfoil hats.
Yeah.
You know, worth 1 checkpoint is already a significant advantage in a final.
Right.
Being worth 2 checkpoints, that is like game changing. Like the fact that Jordan, after the karma points, like only won by like 4 points is like insane to me. Because like without the karma points, like he wins by a lot.
8 points.
Yeah.
Which is
like a slaughter.
Yeah.
Right. And like I just don't know how you can, like, obviously it's results oriented. Like I listened to like some of Tori's thing with Scott Yeager and Derek on their podcast. So it was like, and I think a lot of people would agree to this, where it's very personally biased, like involved, where it's like, well, if I won because of it, of course I'm saying yes to being the champion, taking that money, because like, hey, that was the mechanics of the game and I won it. It's no different than Survivor with Edge of Extinction, the winner only playing 9 days on the island, but winning because that was the mechanics of the season. But we can be upset with the mechanics, but the players need to realize we're not upset with them until they start throwing it in our face.
What's crazy about it is just, you know, the Rachel catching Jenny there is it was the difference. It was 8-2. So it was essentially, if there were 2 more checkpoints that we had 10, like karma was taken out of it. So you had 2 more, you know, swimming, whatever puzzles you want to throw in there. The only way Rachel could have caught Jenny is if she won both of those checkpoints and Jenny came in 4th. And off of the way that the final was going, There was a 0% chance of that happening unless Jenny was hit by that aforementioned harpoon that was going after Jordan. Like there was just no shot of that happening. And so it's massive to jump. And just the way that you see Rachel continuing to double down and saying that she's proud of the game that she played, the final that she ran, and that she's co-champions. It's embarrassing. I think it's so embarrassing that if you look back beginning of the season or when she was the only member left of Era 1, when we were all praising her, saying that she was playing this great game. And if you would have told us halfway through the season, Rachel's going to win this, I would have thought, there's a chance that you could make the argument. Rachel gets to 3, ties, we'll say Evelyn, because we're keeping Veronica out of there. You could make a GOAT argument for Rachel. But the fact that everything's transpired the way that it was, that she was like gifted a first place win and she keeps doubling down, not only would I never make that argument, it makes me want to reconsider taking her off of my Mount Rushmore. That's how gross I think it feels.
I think my issue is, and I've been saying it for like the past few episodes now, is that I feel like she's taking in the criticism of the karma points as a reflection on her, but she's now made it about her with how she's doubled down and been so defensive about it. Because like we're upset about the karma points. We're not upset that she gets to be like a winner because of the game. Because ultimately that was the game mechanics, and then she got the profit off of a game mechanic. But I put an asterisk next to her win. Of course I do, because she played a great game. She didn't play a good final. And so, like, how can I reward someone who was consistently bottom half the entire final, but because people liked her, or other notions, just like, for example, Derek only giving Rachel a 5 amongst the women because he's friends with her and he wanted someone from Era 1 to win, so he gave all the other women 2s and 1s, versus if Rachel went out with him, he would have been giving Tori a 5, and he was going to give Michelle and Olivia higher scores because, well, they went to Challenge Mania Lives with them. And so the karma points was flawed because the karma points was always meant to be how you were impacted on the season. But the people that were getting voted out weren't necessarily voting based off of what happened in the season. They're voting based off of friendships that they've had for 20 plus years or whatever, who they fucking hate, and who they were like, I want to give you the advantage and fuck everyone else. But it had nothing to do with what was going on.
Which
in the
essentially
season.
played an advantage to anybody from Era 1 who would have made the final, right?
Yep.
Because they were all gone. You know what I mean? So it's like Era 2 had 2 people in the final.
Yes.
Era 3 had 2 people in the final. Era 4 had 3 people in the final.
Yeah.
Right. Era 1 had 1 person in the final. So like, even if you looked at it from that standpoint, Era 1 was always going to have the advantage with karma points.
And as she says, Era 1, we get the job done. And apparently the job is something very unlike Era 1, and it's accepting handouts.
Here's what I would like
trophies.
everybody from Era 1 to consider, because you guys know I've loved you guys all season. I've loved you guys all season. This is what I would like you guys to consider. Now, mind you, before you answer what I'm about to say, everybody has watched you guys since your origin on this show, so they all know what you were like in your early years of this show. And my question to you guys would be, what would your reactions be in your early years to a karma point vote deciding who wins the season? Would you guys justify it? Or would you guys be absolutely losing your minds? Because I'm going to be honest, guys. I blame a lot of the OGs for the shift in culture surrounding the show over the past, let's call it 6 years, right? You guys were absolute savages. You guys were absolute dogs. You guys did not care about being politically correct or being nice or being anything to each other. You just provided amazing TV and amazing competition. And that's all you really cared about. But when you guys weren't on the show and you started seeing people coming on the show, maybe from different networks, maybe from new shows, you all started like chiming in and chiming in and chiming in. And you weren't chiming in like a good way. You were like chiming in a way of like, oh, this person, is this, they should never be invited back on the show. Like you almost like fed into the cancel culture that created the essentially created the play nice era and the kumbaya era of the challenge. And then you guys did all that basically under the guise of, if we came back, if we did all this, it would be so much different. We'd bring all that old school feel back. And it's like the only old school feel you guys have brought back is you being old. But like none of the other aspects that made you guys the old school feeling of like kicking ass in competition, being savages, arguing, all that stuff. None of that is back. And we're at a point now with the show where we've now had 2 seasons in a row, All Stars 4 and season 40, where the winner was decided by essentially like a friendship vote. Like we've seen seasons where the winners have split, given money to the losers. You know what I mean? Like, what have you guys done to the show? Like, what have you guys done to the show? Like, you can't blame CBS for this. You can't blame Are You the One for this. You can't blame these people for this. This is all your faults. I'm being completely honest. This is all your faults. And like the fact that somebody was able to jump from 3rd place to 1st place is absolutely insane. And I'm not taking anything away from Rachel, because the fact that she was in that final was a testament to itself. But I cannot help but feel like Michelle got absolutely slighted and screwed over. And Jenny also got absolutely slighted and screwed over. And that would have been a statement. Like, that would have been a statement, right? Like 2 Era 4 people placing 1st and 2nd on the women's side. And now that is essentially tarnished because somebody from Era 1 was able to jump from 3rd place to 1st place. And the thing is, it's not like any of the women in the final were weak. They were beating all of the men. They were beating all of the men except for Jordan.
Right.
Like that's the most impressive thing. And the biggest takeaway that I would take from this final is, you want to make the argument that the women are stronger than the men? Hell yeah, you can, because they for sure are. And we've all been saying this for the past how many seasons, that the competition on the women's side has been amazing. Competition on the men's side has been terrible. Like, these old guys have been awful. Jordan is the only like beacon of shining light to like be like, no, the younger guys are still got it. If they're there, the old guys aren't winning. And that's only come from Jordan. You know what I mean? And like, listen, I'll give myself shit on this. I've come back. I've gone home early. So like, I'm not making the argument for myself here, but I'm making the argument in the sense that you guys could have walked away from this final extremely happy with the performance of all of the women regarding of their places. I think it was an injustice that Jenny and Michelle did not get sole 1st and 2nd place.
What?
Inside, it would have been a robbery if Jordan lost. Like, that would be like Bananas jumping from 3rd to 1st to share a win with Jordan. Now, granted, he didn't get the karma points to do that, but it's like, let's say Derek or Kyland, were able to make that jump and tie him. It would have been an injustice, and people would have been outraged. I think because it's the women, not as many people are outraged, but if it was the men, people would be outraged.
Yeah, like, and that's where I'm like, conspiracy theories are sort of warranted here, where they're like, because let's say they're doing the math before, like, they're like revealing what the karma point actually was, and they're like, okay, 1st checkpoint doesn't make a difference. Like, if we only do 1 checkpoint, does not make a difference. 2, okay, we do get this cool twist of Michelle getting robbed of 2nd place and getting co-winners with someone from Era 4 and Era 1. Plus, that gives us someone from Era 1 winning, which really matters to us. If we do 3 checkpoints, we might be screwing Jordan over here. That might be a little too much, and then it really pushes Rachel to sole 1st.
You would have got tied for 1st, which would have been a robbery. There were 6 checkpoints. The fact that the karma points made up like if you factor those in for a total of 8 checkpoints, made up what 25% of the checkpoints.
Yeah.
That's insane to me.
Yeah. So there were 9. It makes it 9 checkpoints overall because they did count the overnight as a checkpoint. But yeah, that's still like 22%. You have over a fifth of the final score is based off of that. You know what would have been like the badass thing for Rachel to do? Would have been like, TJ, this is such an honor. Like, this is incredible. However, I did not show up in this final. Even with these karma points, I don't deserve to be up here. These 2 women who are the next like wave of this show deserve the placements that they got, and I'll take third. Like, no one would ever do that, to be clear. But I'm like, imagine that, like, that's the Rachel outcome. People would be overwhelmingly being like standing the hell out of Rachel for like rejecting the premise of karma points.
They go crazy for it. First, to touch on that, if you're telling me that Jenny's the future of the challenge, I have a lot of questions.
This is Rachel talking, not me talking.
But outside of that, if there's 2 questions that I would love to ask Rachel. It is, how would she feel as back in the day that there was supposed to be a first, second, and third, fourth? That 20 years ago, you're the OG, you built the show, a tie for first place. That would really sit well for you, because with most competitors, it won't. I wanted a definitive answer. Did I come first, second, or third? And the second question is, would she still be so gung-ho on, I have no problem with how the karma points ended, if it took the win away from Jenny, it got her to tie for second, and Michelle came in first? No way. She'd be shitting all over the karma points.
And again, that goes to, they're going to be biased towards how it impacted them.
I agree 100%. And the other side of me, I like to play devil's advocate. Okay. Yeah. Just as much as, people like to, shit on the challenge gods for human error, and stuff like that. I like to kind of give them a little bit of credit in like the big picture thing. And I might catch flack for this. Like, I like to give them credit in the big picture of things, right? Like, so for how long has there been like the kumbaya stuff? Like, before they can start to introduce, the old school way of the challenge being, again, with like this new era of people, sprinkle in some OGs here and there. Do you think they almost had to make the culture hate the friendliness so much that now it can shift back to what it is? I mean, because here's the thing. All Stars 5 trailer dropped. It's rivals. A lot of nasty people are back, and I mean nasty in like the best way possible, right? Like, we've got Devon back. She is a confessional like queen, gangster. Shane, messy as fuck. Frank, OG mean.
Dario, no,
Dario and Ashley K. But you got Ashley Mitchell back. OG savage.
You got Frank,
right? Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is, like, do you almost feel like they maybe like set everybody up to kind of be so outraged by like karma points for 2 seasons in a row that it's like, I think the Vacation Alliance is done after this season. Okay. I think the kumbaya aspect is done after this season, because the blowback has just been so much. And, I always kind of look to, Bananas as like the culture shifter in a way, right? Because he really hasn't been messy on like the seasons that he was on. He does his whole shtick of like, the world is against me, blah, blah, blah. But this was the first time you really kind of saw him really get his hands dirty. Again,
quite a while.
In terms of drawing the line in the sand, taking the risks, right? Like, I mean, it really was him against a bunch of women, which wind the clocks back 6 years ago, he's getting called every terrible name in the book. But here we are now, and people are like, this is what we want to see. It's about time he was Messi again, all that stuff, right? And now do you think this sets up for like maybe the next 4 years for like the messiness to come back? I mean, like a lot of the messy people are back in the rotation. I'm back in the rotation. Amanda's back in the rotation. Ashley's back in the rotation. Devon's in the rotation. Shane, Frank are in the rotation. You know, this could be that shift where like now moving forward, being nasty is acceptable. As long as you don't cross the lines.
And I think their last point makes a lot of sense there as well. And if this is all true, Pat tipped off to production for creating that, because this is like the first time where like overwhelmingly the fandom is like on the same page. Fandom, podcasters like across the board all being shitting on the same thing about the karma points, how it impacted the game, how it was just based off friendships, popularity, like stuff like that puts like your era on the back foot, because like unfortunately like you guys don't have, outside of Josh, like the seasons and all this time that the other eras had, where it's sort of just like a big middle finger to the game itself, being like, fuck you, challenge, for allowing this to just be a friendship game. Like this isn't like, I come to watch the challenge when I don't want to watch Survivor, when I don't want to watch Big Brother, where I don't want to watch these other shows where it's so reliantly
watch those
social
shows.
game, being friendly, being nice, which is the right way to play. But in the challenge, I'm like, yes, do all that stuff, be messy though, get to the final, where at the final, throw the social game out the fucking window, because now it's just a truly physical mental warfare game. And yeah, let's do it.
And it's what they should do, because if you look at, sure, the challenge early days, people look back with that, fondly, but where a lot of, fans, people consider the golden age was the messy seasons. It was your rivals, your exes, just the mascot, even like free agents where people were being messy, but you kept going back to those themes that was going to incite arguments, drama, hookups, all of that. So, yeah, bring it back. If you're telling me that we had to sit through these last few seasons, but we're going to get the next 4 years of that back, maybe it was all worth it.
Yeah. But with all that said, Dan, you wanted to bring up something to me right before we started the podcast.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. So, if you've been listening to us, even from beyond season 40, my position has been, ever since World Championships, I thought Jordan was the GOAT, and I said if he got a win in season 40, that cemented it. I don't think anyone's better. Then we added Paulie into the mix, and Paulie comes off the top rope and just stealing it from me, which I appreciate. I'm happy to share that with Paulie. But Alex, you were the one that was always pushed back against it. I know you were more of the banana side of things, which understandably he's got 7. But given that we saw the way season 40 played out, the season and final that Jordan played, I just wanted to get an update, for everyone right now. Where are you at right now in the GOAT conversation?
So before I give my answer, let me use Jordan's words that he's had recently.
Oh, I knew you were going to go there.
Is there no better competitor in the challenge history than Jordan? The answer is no. There is no one that's a better competitor from clock in to clock out in a season than Jordan Wisely. Now, is he the GOAT challenger? Unfortunately, for me, the answer is still overall the history. It's bananas, because because Jordan said it time and time again too. It's like he played the game that bananas perfected. Like Jordan's like capitalizing on that now, which is why it makes that GOAT conversation so much more enticing between him and bananas. But like without bananas doing what he did, it's not even about the championships for me. It's about how bananas helped clear the direction for the prime of the challenge of this is how you play the game, and this is what brings entertainment to the television. It's still bananas, especially when you have seasons like this where like Jordan's a great competitor. He's not driving the story. He's not creating the drama. He's sitting in the background because he's perfected his version of the game. So in terms of competitor, it's Jordan, and it always will be Jordan. But as a GOAT challenger, it's still bananas.
That's fair, but I mean, you're not out there the first people that, invented the forward pass in football. Those first quarterbacks, that changed the game. We're not exactly saying that they're the GOAT. And if you want to say that it's bananas, I'm not going to knock you for it. I think that there's really good arguments for it. I just go back to he has the 5, and look what he did with those 5. You have X's 2 was him and Sarah dominated that game.
Oh, absolutely.
They won it. Like, I don't think it mattered if, Bananas was so butthurt about it. You could put Bananas and Nani there. I still don't think it matters. And they ran away with that final. You go to 30. He did really well all season. He dominated that final with a, broken leg. And from all accounts,
if Nelson doesn't get sent home, does Jordan come back into the game?
He may not, but the whole point with that, it was just Jordan didn't lose an elimination. He lost on some Hunter getting to send him out for winning a daily. I get it. It's part of it.
Which is terrible.
Yeah. You could throw that in there. It's the same way that, like, both him and CT shouldn't have had to fight to get back in the game, because it wasn't like they lost last in a purge. It was thrown up to someone else won a daily and got it. But very well, you can make that argument. I choose to overlook it, but whatever. He dominates season 30, and the final, it isn't even close. There are rumors they cut out portions of that final because if you left it in, it made it incredibly obvious for everyone that he won. If World of Worlds 2, he puts on a masterclass that season. Masterclass. World Championships, I mean, him and Kaz won that final fairly easily. And then you come into 40, he comes in late. They have the scene with him walking in his fucking cowboy hat, being like, I'm here to fuck shit up. And he did that the entire way throughout the season. Wasn't nowhere even close being threatened of going home, and ran away with the final. I just think that body of work is the most impressive thing we've ever seen anyone do in the challenge. But like I said, Bananas has 7. Bananas has the longevity, some of the entertainment values that he doesn't. But I think it's between those two. I know, Alex, you and I were talking about it before we went on, where it's at right now.
Let me say it.
It was your line. It was all. It was your line.
I will take the heat on this one, because apparently I won't be the only one who says it based off of clips that's revealed on from the reunion. So I think with this win, it's no longer a 3-headed race for the GOAT. It's a 2-headed race, and it's Jordan and Bananas. I think CT, while great, while iconic, I think a lot of people weigh nostalgia way too much in CT's favor. CT's number 3 in that Mount Rushmore of the GOATs.
What are your thoughts, Paulie? You're just staying out of it. I know that's your guy.
Here's the thing: is ever since Bananas got his 7th win, he's made finals.
Yep.
And, he just, he hasn't even gotten 2nd place, right? He's gotten 3rd. Now, the argument is at least he's still making it deep every single season he's on, which is impressive in itself and should hold its merit for GOAT status. Jordan definitely deserves one of the 2 spots. I would put him at 1. Just because I value the competition aspect of it more than, the pioneering of the game.
Right.
It's definitely Joe Montana was great. Tom Brady is the GOAT,
Sure.
However, CT, even though he doesn't make it far on some seasons, the seasons where he makes it to the final, it's a win guaranteed. In the final, like he has a different switch. If I were to give it the top 2 spots, it would have to be CT and Jordan. Only for that fact where it's like I almost feel like CT is so good in the sense where it's like he knows he's getting the call, he knows he's going on. I almost feel like he strategically, plans when he's going to go home early in order to be able to come in and fly under the radar and then like make a final and win. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what he does. Like, I feel like he did it on 32 and 33, early exits, was able to come in, play the layup card on 34, gets the win, right? Goes back on 35, early exit, comes back and plays the layup card, gets a win, and then, gets a back-to-back win after that, and then takes off, comes back, goes home early. Likely he's going to come back and play the layup card, and he may make a deep run and he may win. You know what I mean? If that happens, just remember this clip right here, because then it will be proof that is his strategy.
No, for sure. I guess like overall, I just don't like me like putting him at third. It's like, to me, that's not an insult. That's not an insult when I'm like putting Bananas and Jordan above him, because I'm just like, oh, I'm not saying you're first, but I'm saying you're third of everyone that's ever played the game. But like, you're gonna like torch me and just be like, you don't know shit about the challenge.
I do agree with you though. CT does get a lot of bonus points for nostalgia.
Yeah,
nostalgia, and he gets away like, man.
Like, if Bananas loses a final, everybody's saying retire old man. Like, CT goes home early and everybody's like, still the best.
Yeah. Oh, we love him. Can't wait for him to come back next year. He'll be so hungry.
The argument that gets me is always, well, had he not gotten thrown off so many of those early seasons, he'd have more wins. It's just like, he lost a bunch of finals back in the day on some of those team challenges. So I don't think that's a definite. He did punch the people. So you can't just say like he was screwed against it. And then 3, he's been able to sit on that just intimidation factor alone that he probably doesn't have all these years later had he not been knocking people out. So I think it all goes both ways.
Look, it took him to get his first win, took him being paired with a prime Wes on a rival season where they weren't really even rivals. They just played it for TV and like them versus Frank and Johnny was the story the entire season. But it was like you had a prime CT and a prime West together, and West being able to keep CT from killing someone in order for them to kill it in a final. Because before that, Bananas beat them in finals. Like, other people beat them in finals. Like, Nehemiah has his win because they were facing off against CT and Big Easy died. So like, some of it's semantics, but it's like,
I mean, but you also like, it was so much easier to win those first few seasons and he didn't. I mean, I know you're not really supposed to say his name much anymore, but during that time, Kenny came and gone and got 3 wins before CT got a single. He didn't have his first one.
I think the argument for Kenny is one of those where it's like, what if?
It's the same with the Landon.
All of those things never happened. Would there even be a conversation of who's in the GOAT conversation? Because I think if Kenny had the tenure that like Bananas and CT had, I think he's got more than 7 wins.
Yeah, if he got that longevity in him, like,
he still looks like a beast at his age.
Yeah, like he would still probably kill it. Like, I think he would still be able to make finals. He would be competitive. He would probably, at the minimum, be winning money at the finals every single time he got to it. Because like he's Bananas, but like taller, and like they're both in shape, but like he's taller. He's more like naturally athletic. Like dude was made for like challenge finals. Would he have done well in the water? I don't know, but like
carried Wes up a mountain.
He did carry Wes up a mountain.
He did.
But with that, looking at the context of this season with our finalists right here, right now, like what are we looking back on with each of them? So like we know Jordan, GOAT conversation becomes even tighter now. Let's talk Derek. Like I think Derek was a surprise of the season.
In the game.
Yeah.
Lethal social game and can compete.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's definitely put himself out where maybe he went those past 15 years without getting calls. I think he has to be in the mix now. For me, the question is going to be, everyone just saw him excel in the game, both physically and socially. Now that everyone knows that that's in his repertoire, how will he do his next season?
Does he get like the John A treatment with
I
minus
think
the
he'll still
wins?
I think he'll still be good because he didn't win and he's got a great social game.
He very well could be. I think that's just what I'm interested in seeing, which, I mean, after the past 2 seasons prior to that, if you said you want to see Derek Chavez back, I'd be like, I kind of forget who he is, but now remember him. And I would like to see him come back and kind of see his story continue. I'd like to see
I think my overall point for Derek is this season, and specifically how they edited him in the final, cements him as I'm going to be on the main show. I'm flagship now. I compete with all of them. I can bust my ass and I can get a win on the flagship. I don't put him on All Stars anymore. Put him on the main one. Kylan, while getting last, I give him kudos for going through it, knowing that he knew he was last. He knew he was always going to be last and still
smiled the whole final.
Yeah. And you know what? Kudos to him for also like pissing on a board, the directions. Good on him. Good on him for pissing on the board.
Lots of upside. He's cemented that he's definitely will be in the mix for the next 5 to 6 years of calls, unless something outrageous happens. Yeah. So overall, good season for him. Was, I'd say, overwhelmingly positive. I'd like to see a little more drama from him, but as the competitor aspect, he did very well this season.
Yeah. Tori, unfortunate hand given to her in the final, was off on the bad foot. Not a natural swimmer to begin with. I don't take anything away from her from this performance. I think she actually brought some of like the old part of Tori that a lot of people loved initially back this season. I know she's taking a break right now, but I think that's almost a positive for her, where I'm like, take that break, take a 1 season off, come back. And I think like she's coming to a new dynamic on the show potentially, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I think this is one where in the past, prior to the season, maybe would have shit on Tori a little more. Grew a pretty newfound respect for her because we started to see the new Tori, and I don't think anything can be taken away for she. Up until the final, dominated the season, especially when it was individually. She was winning every other daily.
She won 6 individual dailies.
Yeah. Was super impressive. She really showed why she is one of the, if not the female face moving forward, especially, off of her last 5 seasons. So very impressive. Not the outcome she wanted, but you can't take away that she did have a great season.
Mm-hmm. And then like we already talked about Rachel, we talked about Jenny. Like Jenny, great athlete, but like I just don't see them calling her that often again. But Michelle, to round it all out, like I think a lot of people that are Michelle haters need to just get over themselves now and realize, one, the cast love her, TJ loves her, production loves her. She put her heart into this final, and like she was one difference in a checkpoint away from being the sole champion of a season where everyone called her the layup, the easy out, someone who would go out first or second because of all the rivalries she does have with the women within the season. Like, I think she should look back on this season, even with being screwed out of money, and be like extremely proud of her performance and finally get out of the imposter syndrome of, do I deserve to be here or not? You deserve to be here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she does next.
Yeah, I agree. Michelle opened a lot of eyes this season, mine included. I always thought she was just a shady social gamer. And she backed up her game, and that's amazing.
Yeah,
no, it was super impressive performance from her. You can see why she's going to keep coming back. She's much more likable when she isn't attached to Jay. So, if we can keep that going, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's we've talked about this season enough, not just today, but really since August. So I think we got it all out. Any last words before we move on to Handjob Steve and All Stars 5?
That was my final words of like, you guys, we're going to be taking a few weeks off, and then we'll be here as not only the All Stars 5 podcast, but the standing of Handjob Steve will commence. All the hand jokes, all of the time, All
are
the
getting
still shots are
t-shirts.
being made.
Yeah. We will be getting T-shirts, and I believe we'll be selling those as well. So be on the lookout for your hand.
Be on the
job
lookout
Steve
for some
shirts.
hand job Steve t-shirts.
Yeah.
I think some of the pictures that we were deciding behind was like, or like,
really showcasing.
Hands will be glowing. Don't you worry.
The hands will be glowing.
Yeah, the hands
to
will
get
be glowing.
yours. And lastly, for those who rocked with us this entire season, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those that like subscribe to the channel, press that bell for notifications, gave us 5 stars on if you listen to the audio feed of this. But we can't do what we do without having listeners like you. So thank you all for joining our ride through this mess of a 5 months.
yes.
Yeah. We appreciate y'all, and we will see you in just a few weeks for All Stars 5. Take it easy, everyone.